Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Captain Patriotic. How's everybody been lately? I know it's been a little while, and it may seem like forever since we last spoke to each other, but I'm doing alright, and I greatly apologize for not posting new content these last couple of months. It's been pretty eventful, to say the least. But mostly good things for that matter, don't worry. I took off around Christmas and New Year's because I had a couple of trips already planned that I was very much looking forward to. The first one was actually a tiny little road trip to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I got to spend some quality time with my family and saw a bunch of stuff, went on Route 66, and saw the Golden Driller, and I fulfilled my mom's promise of taking her to see one of her favorite shows where they were filmed and everything at the Pioneer Woman Ranch just outside of Pawhuska, Oklahoma. If you guys have never been there before, it is really, really fascinating. Yeah, I know it's in the middle of the country and everything, but it's so serene out there, and it's very well worth the drive if you've never been out that way before. Highly, highly recommend it. And then, after the holidays ended around New Year's, I turned around and I went on a week-long vacation in Orlando, where I spent a lot of time extensively in both Universal as well as Disney World. That was a worthwhile trip, you guys, and for those of us that have never been down there before, or haven't been down there in a very long time, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you guys take some time off to go down there and explore everything. I know there's more to do down there than just the parks, but trust me, going down there for the parks is worthwhile in itself. I had an absolute blast going to both Universal parks as well as all four of the Disney World parks down there in Florida. Oh my lord, guys. That was one of the best trips that I personally have been on in a very long time. So anyway, that's part of what I was doing with my time off, really taking some time for myself and really kickbacking and enjoying things for once. Well, then I turned around when I came back from Florida at the beginning of January, and I came down really sick with all of the stuff that's going around lately. Ironically, it wasn't RSV, flu, or COVID, thank goodness. But I had a really bad upper respiratory infection combined with sinus infection. So forgive me if I still sound a little nasally and congested. I've been dealing with this for almost a month now, and it hasn't been easy. But I am 10 times at least better than I was a few weeks ago. So things are slowly coming around, thank goodness. I say all that to mean that I'm coming back with you with more regular content from here on out. And if you remember the last time that I posted a video back in December, we started another Most Decorated Veterans series, where this time I'm starting my focus with the most decorated World War II veterans from each of the major service branches, namely the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, as well as the Marine Corps. And if you'll recall in that last video, I talked in extensive detail about the most decorated Army veteran of World War II, which was none other than Audie Leon Murphy. Although he is by all means considered the most decorated Army veteran of World War II, of course, there's other individuals that have served in multiple conflicts that could take the title of most decorated Army veteran of all time. But what makes his case very unique was that in his short tenure, active duty-wise in the Army for roughly 3 years or what have you, he earns every single combat award that the Army awarded at the time during World War II, which included the Medal of Honor, an Army Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, 2 Bronze Stars, 3 Purple Hearts, as well as the Legion of Merit, among other decorations. For a young, late teen, early 20-something-year-old kid, basically, he was a national hero, more or less, by the time he left the Army from active duty at the end of World War II. Which brings me to the topic of today's video, where last time we focused on the Army infantry branch of the U.S. during World War II. This time, we are going to be talking about the most decorated fighter pilot from the United States Army Air Corps, or as it's well known today as the U.S. Air Force. The Army Air Corps is basically the predecessor to today's Air Force, which was established right between World War II and Korea. The honor for the most decorated Army Air Corps fighter pilot goes to none other than Major Richard Dick Ira Bong. And he was an Army Air Force major, as well as a Medal of Honor recipient for serving in the Pacific Theater during World War II. Not only was Major Bong considered one of the most decorated American fighter pilots of the Second World War, but he was in general considered the United States' top flying ace in the war, with shooting down a whopping 40, that's right, 40 Japanese aircraft during all of his service in the Pacific Theater, with the help of a Lockheed P-38 Lightning fighter plane. That's a pretty big feat, you guys, to basically be the top flying ace of the whole World War II, at least for America. That is very, very impressive, you guys. But before we delve into his military career, I want to take a step back in time and give you a little background info on where he came from and what got him interested in flying for the Air Force, basically. So, our story begins on September 24th, 1920, in Superior, Wisconsin, where Richard Bong was born, the first of 9 children to Carl Bong, who was an immigrant from Sweden, and his mother, Dora Bryce, who was an American of Scottish-English descent. He became known by the common nickname of Dick, where he grew up on a farm in Poplar, Wisconsin, and from a very young age, he became interested in aircraft from watching planes fly over the farm, and this inspired him to become an avid airplane model builder. Fast forward a few years, and in 1934, Bong entered Poplar High School, where he was really talented. He played the clarinet in the marching band, as well as participated in baseball, basketball, as well as hockey. Because Poplar was a 3-year school at the time, Bong transferred to Central High School in Superior for his senior year, where he ultimately graduated in 1938. After his graduation, he began studying at Superior State Teachers College, which is the current-day University of Wisconsin at Superior, in the fall of 1938. And while he was there, Bong enrolled in the civilian pilot training program and also took private flying lessons whenever he wasn't in class and studying and what have you. Fast forward 3 years, and on May 29th, 1941, he officially enlists in the Army Air Corps Aviation Cadet Program, Fun fact for you guys, one of his flying instructors at the time was Captain Barry Goldwater, who would later become a famous U.S. Senator from Arizona. So, after he enlisted in the aviation cadet program, it was very clear to his instructors that Bong had a bunch of talent when it comes to handling the planes and maneuvering them and what have you. In fact, his ability as a fighter pilot was recognized while he was training in Northern California specifically. It was during his time in California that he was commissioned a second lieutenant and awarded his official pilot wings on January 19th, 1942. His first assignment in the Army Air Corps was as an instructor or gunnery pilot at Luke Field, Arizona from January 1942 until May of 1942. His first operational assignment was on May 6th to the 49th Fighter Squadron, 14th Fighter Group at Hamilton Field, California, where he learned to fly his famous twin-engine Lockheed P-38 Lightning fighter plane. On June 12, 1942, Bong flew very low, or as they called it, buzzed, over a house in nearby San Anselmo, which was the home of a pilot who had just gotten married. He was cited for the incident and, in fact, temporarily grounded for breaking flying rules in California. He wasn't the only one, though. There were 3 other P-38 pilots who had looped around the Golden Gate Bridge on the same day. And for this incident, flying over the house, and for looping around the Golden Gate Bridge with those other 3 pilots, he was grounded for a long time. In fact, Bong was reprimanded by General George C. Kinney, who commanded the 4th Air Force at the time, told Bong directly that if you didn't want to fly down Market Street, I wouldn't have you in my Air Force, but you are not to do it anymore, and I mean what I say. He later wrote that we needed kids like this lad, referring to Bong. In all subsequent accounts, Bong denied ever flying under the Golden Gate Bridge. Nonetheless, Bong was still grounded when the rest of his group was sent without him to England in July of 1942. And because of this, he actually ended up transferring to another Hamilton Field unit, which was the 84th Fighter Squadron of the 78th Fighter Group. It was from there that Bong was sent to the Southwest Pacific Theater. Bong was then flown overseas as a passenger aboard a B-24 Liberator from Hawaii to Hickman Field in Australia, and upon arrival, Bong was assigned to a newly formed P-38 fighter unit, the 17th Fighter Squadron, and by November 1942, Bong was transferred to the 49th Fighter Group, 9th Fighter Squadron, which were known as the Flying Knights. And at the time, the unit as a whole was flying the now antiquated P-40 Warhog, and were famous for their aerial defenses of the Darwin Islands from March through August of 1942. After all of this, the 9th Fighter Squadron was one of 2 units in the 5th Air Force selected for conversion to the P-38 Lightning that Bong just received extensive training on. In fact, Bong was among a group of new pilots in the Southwest Pacific area with experience flying the new twin-engine fighter, so they ended up helping these pilots that were already in the theater convert from the P-40 Warthog and P-39 Airacobra to the new P-38 Lightning fighter planes. Later on that month, November 1942, while the squadron waited for delivery of the scarce P-38s, Bong and other 9th Fighter Squadron pilots were reassigned to temporarily to fly missions and gain combat experience with the 39th Fighter Squadron, 35th Fighter Group, based in Port Moresby, New Guinea. On December 27th, Bong claimed his initial aerial victory, shooting down a Mitsubishi A6M, or commonly known in Hollywood as a Japanese Zero, as well as a Nakajimi Ki-43 Oscar over Buna Island. And it was for this particular action that Bong was awarded his first military medal, his first Silver Star Medal, which, as we stated before, the Silver Star Medal is the third highest military honor that anyone in any military branch can receive for bravery in combat. So after he receives his first Silver Star, Bong rejoined the 9th Fighter Squadron, who was then equipped fully with the new P-38s. It was during January that he was awarded his first of 7 Distinguished Flying Crosses on January 8th, 1943, and it occurred while escorting a bomber formation. Him and 7 occupying pilots attacked approximately 20 enemy fighters. In the ensuing engagement, Lieutenant Bong shot down 1 enemy aircraft with a long burst from approximately 200 yards. This plane was the 5th hostile aircraft destroyed by Lieutenant Bong in aerial combat. Now, fast forward a couple of months after he was awarded his first Distinguished Flying Cross to March 11th, 1943, whenever he would be awarded a second Silver Star for actions taken with a firefight with multiple Japanese fighter pilots over the Bismarck Sea. In April of 1943, due to these gallant actions, he was promoted to first lieutenant. Fast forward 3 months, and on July 26, 1943, Bong led a flight of 10 fighters just north of Lae, New Guinea. Captain Bong at the time sighted an enemy formation of about 20 Japanese Zero airplanes. He immediately led a series of 3 attacks and shot down 2 enemy planes. At this time, 15 or more additional enemy fighters joined in the engagement. Disregarding the greatly superior numbers of the enemy, Captain Bong fearlessly led in his flight again, and his accurate gunnery destroyed 2 more aircraft of the 3 which he attacked himself. The enemy formation after this was greatly dispersed, and the flight returned to its base without loss. Against numerical odds of more than 3-1 during this flight, and under Captain Bong's daring leadership, his team destroyed 11 enemy planes, of which he shot down 4 enemy planes in total when it was all said and done. All of these actions would ultimately earn him the second highest military honor in the U.S. Army, the Army Distinguished Service Cross, and following this award, he was promoted to captain in August of 1943, and throughout the rest of the year, he would earn 3 more Distinguished Flying Crosses for the over 50 flights that he took part in various areas in the Southwest Pacific. 2 of those Distinguished Flying Crosses were awarded for actions over New Britain during the Battle of New Britain later on that year. While on leave to the United States, Bong met Marjorie Vettendal at Superior State Teachers College's homecoming event, and he began to date her. And after returning to the Southwest Pacific in January of 1944, he named his P-38 fighter Marge and adorned the nose with her photo that he had taken before being shipped back to the Pacific. Whenever he did return for his, quote, second tour of duty, he continued to excel as a fighter pilot with a fifth Distinguished Flying Cross being awarded to him on March 3rd, 1944. This particular Distinguished Flying Cross was awarded while he was serving as part of a two-plane formation engaged on a fighter sweep over a particular Japanese base on Taji, New Guinea. And while approaching, an enemy bomber was observed heading east. The two fighter pilots dived and hit this aircraft with sustained burst. Captain Bong's attack left the plane burning and it crashed among the trees about 2 miles from the airstrip on that particular base. After diving away from several intercepting Zeros, he closed in on another bomber where his fire severed the enemy's aircraft tail assembly. That plane ultimately crashed, exploding on impact on the ground. On April 12, 1944, Captain Bong would make history as he shot down both his 26th and 27th Japanese aircraft, which ultimately surpassed pilot Eddie Rittenbacher's record of 26 credited victories during World War I. His actions on that day also earned him his 6th Distinguished Flying Cross, and soon afterwards he was promoted to Major by General Kenney and dispatched to the United States to see General Hap Arnold, who gave him leave in the United States. So, after visiting training bases and going on a 15-state bound promotional tour, Bong ultimately returned to New Guinea in September of 1944, where he was assigned to the V Fighter Command Staff as an advanced gunnery instructor with permission to go on missions but not to seek combat. Now, knowing Bong in the way that he is, he knew that he was not going to set out of any fight that he could get himself into. No, he wanted to see every last little bit of action that he could possibly get himself into. Though assigned to duty as a gunnery instructor and neither required nor expected to perform combat duty, Major Bong regularly volunteered and at his own risk wanted to be sent in different combat missions. His particular aggressiveness and daringness resulted in his shooting down 8 enemy aircraft between October 10th and November 15th, 1944, and on December 7th, 1944, 3 years to the day that Pearl Harbor erupted, which pushed America into World War II, Bong would earn his 7th and final Distinguished Flying Cross for downing 2 more enemy planes over the Philippines. And by December 17th, he had increased his air-to-air victory claims to a whopping 40 Japanese aircraft. That's pretty damn impressive if you ask me. Personally, being responsible for shooting down 40 enemy planes, god dang, that is no freaking joke. Jesus, this guy was some mofo. Anyway, so it was based on the recommendation of General Kenney, who at that time was the Far East Air Force commander. Bong would ultimately be awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor from General Douglas MacArthur in a special ceremony later in December of 1944. For all those various flights that he volunteered to take part in as a flying instructor during both October and November of 1944. So, as you can see, he was a very accomplished fighter pilot in his own right throughout the war for various feats whatsoever. One, for basically breaking the all-time American record of air combat victories that formerly used to belong to the great Eddie Rickenbacker. That's an impressive enough feat in itself, and that's not even including all of the combat medals that he was awarded for his service in the Pacific Theater. Guys, I'm not making this stuff up. It's pretty freaking impressive if you ask me. When I first came across this story, I could not believe all of the feats that this individual completed as a pilot during World War II. But as a very brief and quick recap of all of his medals, his total official medals that was awarded for his service during World War II includes the following: the Army Congressional Medal of Honor, the Army Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Star Medals, 7 Distinguished Flying Crosses, which we've already talked about before. But in addition to all of these, he was awarded a whopping 15 Air Medals, in addition to the American Defense Service Medal, the American Campaign Medal, the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, the World War II Victory Medal, 2 Army Presidential Unit Citations, a Philippine Presidential Unit Citation, as well as the Philippine Liberation Medal. Guys, that is pretty freaking impressive. God dang. Could you imagine wearing all of those medals on your chest? God dang. No wonder he was a true patriot, to say the very least. So, fast forward a little bit, and in January of 1945, General Kenny sent America's ace of aces home for good, to where he did not have to see combat anymore. Starting in February, Bong actually married his sweetheart on February 10th, 1945. Now, just because he wasn't serving in combat anymore did not mean that he was through flying. Oh, heck no. No, he was still wanting to be a pilot and still wanted to serve stateside. Now, unfortunately, this would be his ultimate downfall, but anyway, while stateside, Bong participated in numerous PR activities, such as promoting the sale of various war bonds, which America still needed to do at that time. But sadly, he died in California while test flying a Lockheed P-80 jet fighter shortly before the war ended for everyone on August 6th, 1945. This is a very, very inspiring story, and it just comes to show you that despite all the odds against anyone in any situation, that you can still prevail and come out on top big time. And Richard Bong certainly did that in his short tenure in the now United States Air Force. Man, some of the stuff that he must have seen, to me anyway, would have been very, very impressive, especially flying in all of the Japanese hot zones of the Pacific Theater. Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't hard fighting in the European theater for America. There absolutely was, and we saw that with Audie Murphy's impressive Army experiences. They both have their hardships for sure, but, you know, in a lot of ways, I think the Pacific Theater, as far as American troops go, I think that was a little bit tougher to fight in because the Pacific was big and massive, and there was a lot of places where you could go and possibly run into the enemy. There was a lot of island hopping, and there was a lot of unknowns, and a lot more aggressiveness with the Japanese, I feel, than the Germans and the Italians had in Europe. But anyway, this is a very, very impressive story, you guys, and thank you so much for tuning in. If you could, please leave a like and subscribe. I would really, really appreciate it, you guys. And until next time, have a wonderful rest of your day.